the first encounter that there is between a teacher and a student in the Hasidic world, between a Rebbe of Chassidus and his primary disciple and his student, is of course between the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid. Now it's not, when it comes to the story, the Maggid, Bechlal, is shrouded in mystery most of his life. His yahrzeit is coming up on Yutas Kislev, one of the primary events of Kislev in the calendar of Chassidus. The first event of Chassidus in Kislev is that it's the yahrzeit of the Maggid. Later, it's known the Maggid said to the Alter Rebbe, this will be our Yom Tif. So the Giyul of Yutas Kislev is attributed because it was the Yom Zakai of his Rebbe, the Maggid's yahrzeit. So the story is told, and again, where the mucker exactly is, I'm not sure, but it's a Makubal story of how the Maggid came to the Baal Shem Tov for the first time. The Maggid was a huge Kabbalist and a huge Talmud Chacham, Goy and Adir. He heard of the Baal Shem Tov. He knew of the Baal Shem Tov. People were talking then of the unbelievable person the Baal Shem Tov is, but he didn't, because he was intrigued and he wanted to go, but because he was so steeped in his learning and traveling would be a disruption of his learning, so he resisted going. Finally, whether it was because some say because he had suffered in his leg and the Baal Shem Tov was known to be a healer, or whether it was just out of curiosity and a desire to maybe find an ultimate teacher who can guide him, he decided to take the difficult journey and travel to Mezhebush, where the Baal Shem Tov was. And it was an extremely, extremely difficult journey. It was very, very, it did take a toll on the Maggid in terms of his ability to concentrate and learn the way he was used to learning. But he was justifying it all because when he would meet the Baal Shem Tov, it would have all been the light that he was expecting, that the Baal Shem Tov would teach him the secrets of all secrets and open up to him the Chamishim Sharei Bina, was enough to keep him, excited to see the Baal Shem Tov. But he's very, very disappointed because when he came and he had his first meeting with the Baal Shem Tov told him what seemed to be a very simplistic story, and that was it. That was the end of the Yechidus, the end of the audience, and he left. And he was very, very down, and he tried to figure out what the story really meant, but he didn't really see too much meaning in it. Well, he thought maybe, who knows what. He said he'd give it another shot. He came in again to the Baal Shem Tov for a private audience, and again the Baal Shem Tov told him a very simple story, and again he was utterly frustrated because here he spent, whether it was a week or 10 days or whatever it was, traveling, and then he has to go all the way back home, and it was a schlep, and for him, Bittul Torah was so serious, and he really, really felt that it was really a real shanda that he spent all this time. As he was ready to, he decided he's leaving immediately that night. He was going to eat something. I think the Maggid most of the times would fast, so he would break his fast, eat, and then after Ma'ariv have his coachman ready, and immediately he would leave as soon as the moon, there's moonlight, gate, he's leaving. Anyways, as he was ready to go, a messenger came to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov called him back that he should come and see him. No, he wasn't in the mood, but since, out of respect, so if the Baal Shem Tov is calling, he did hear great things about him. He went back to the Baal Shem Tov. When he came into the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov said to him, do you know how to learn? The Zaktav did, I think he said, you know how to learn? Do you know how to learn? Is it true? He said, yes. The Baal Shem Tov says, are you only versed in Nigla, or do you know mysticism as well? Do you know Kabbalah as well? And the Maggid said, yeah, that I'm Baki. The Maggid, by the time he came to Baal Shem Tov, was Baki, but Kol Kisvei Ari and all of Zoyar and everything Balpeh. They're talking about the giant of giant in Kabbalah. So the Baal Shem Tov said, okay. The Baal Shem Tov took out a Pri-Eitz Chaim or an Eitz Chaim from the Arizal, opened up to a certain page, and asked the Maggid to read it. The Maggid read the page, and the Baal Shem Tov said, tell me the pshat of a certain piece. So the Maggid repeated, and he said, the Maggid gave over a pshat. It was a pshat, something that didn't seem to be too complicated. It was something that had to be explained, and he explained it to the Baal Shem Tov. And after he finished, the Baal Shem Tov, wasn't satisfied. The Baal Shem Tov said, nah, that's not the pshat. So the Maggid takes the book again, looks at it, scans it once or twice, concentrates a little bit, and he repeats again, this time maybe adding a little explanation, but basically saying the same thing he said before. And when he was done, he was kind of frustrated already, he said, this is the pshat of the Eitz Chaim, the way I see it. If you have a better pshat, then you tell me the pshat, and then we'll see who's right. So the Baal Shem Tov said to the Maggid, stand up on your feet. And the Maggid stood up, And the Baal Shem Tov started reading the passage of Eitz Chaim. In that passage, it relates names of various different malachim. And as the Baal Shem Tov was speaking, suddenly the Maggid saw the entire room be surrounded by a fire. And he literally saw the malachim that were mentioned over there entering into the room. And it was an incredible experience. He was completely taken by it. He was shaking. He was out of awe, fear, excitement. He never beheld anything like this. This was like literally like he was lifted up and transported up in amongst the malachim up there in heaven. And then the Baal Shem Tov concluded the piece, and the entire vision, whatever he saw, vanished. And he's standing in front of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov said, "That's the pshat in the Eitz Chaim." The Baal Shem Tov said to him, "Your learning is good, but it's felt neshama. It's lacking neshama." I think in this story from the first Rebbe capturing his first student of the one on the Baal Shem Tov had other Talmidim, but the one that was going to be the next Rebbe of Chassidus, the first communication of Chassidus, really tells us the really secret of Chassidus Chinuch, and that is if you're teaching any subject, doesn't make a difference what you are teaching. If you're teaching any subject, obviously I'm talking about in Torah, if you're teaching a subject and you're teaching without neshama, then you're teaching the wrong pshat. That's not the pshat. Meaning it's not, because that's essentially what the Baal Shem Tov said, it's not, you said the incorrect pshat. That means it's even wrong on the level of pshat, not just on the level of soy. If there's no neshama, then it's not Torah. Torah is getlich. Torah is godly. There has to be neshama there. Without neshama, it's information. It can be any other kind of information. The root, the Rebbe Rashab, when he speaks about Chassidus, the Rebbe Rashab says, "Oyer v'chayos nafsheinu nitan lanu." The light and the life force of our lives was given to us. Chassidus is oyer, it's light, and it is chayos, it is energy, it is alive. And therefore, the most important thing in as mechanechim, or anybody that will ever walk into a classroom, if it's a Chassidish school, there has to be an electrifying energy. There has to be a chayos, a fire. If you walk through a Chassidish school, and by recess time, it's not possible, you don't feel the energy that if you put on good music right now, everybody will dance. There's something wrong in the school. There has to be, I'm thinking about it because I teach now once a week in Ol Chana in the school here. So between classes on Friday, I just did 2 classes. Lately, there's like really good music between there. And, the girls are always controlling themselves because if I'm walking by, of course, they can't dance. And I'm saying that's Chassidish school, automatically, spontaneously. There's music, they're dancing, but their dancing is not just because of the music. That can happen at a different than a Beis Yaakov as well. It's because they are in a state of energy. They're aufgelebt, and the reason they're aufgelebt is because they just walked out of a class, and the class sparked them. There is an excitement. I know today's days we're challenged because everybody has to meet certain quotas, and there are certain academic systems, and we have certain tests, and that's of course important. The Rebbe in Tom Chatzmimim and the yeshiva expected tests and beginners. You see, the Rebbe spoke about it a few times. But if the tests and the pressure of just the information and all that stuff dominates over the chayas and over if it becomes the primary Indian, in other words, just the academics and just the information and just you're learning all this information so you can get a good mark on the test and so on and so forth, which sadly I see happening so many times. That's the hepech of Chassidus, of Chassidish Chinuch. Chassidish Chinuch requires that there is an energy and there is a life. And the only way energy goes over is if the teacher that is teaching is energetic. If you're alive in what you're teaching, then that life is electrified. That turns on the students. It can only be turned on if you're excited. If you ask me, the most important thing for Chassidish Mechanech is that they have to be excited about the material that they're teaching. You can say this about any teacher, but with Chassidus, and not just Chassidim, And it's true about any good teacher and any good school, that you'll have a good teacher means that they're excited about what they're doing. In Chassidus, it's a chayos pnimi. It's an neshama chayos. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about that Chassidus is chayos. The Rebbe Rashab says, Oir v'chayos nafsheinu, light and chayos. Because the reason why Chassidus is chayos is because I think it's derived from Chassidus being light. Light, lichtigkeit, when there is illumination, when there's understanding, when there is an appreciation of deeper meaning, when we can see more, that's what brings out chayos. That's what brings lebedigkeit. When things are shallow, there's no chayos. There has to be light. And light comes from where? The Baal Shem Tov says, Oyer is gematria roz, secret. So hayom yom. Roz is oyer. When you know the secret of things, then you can be lichtig. And when there's lichtigkeit, then there's chayos. So here's the thing. So many of you, whether it makes a difference which level of class you're in, whether you're teaching pre-1A, the preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, the first and primary Indian is that when you walk into that classroom, you have to remember one thing. If you're not excited about the material you're teaching, then you're probably better off not teaching that. Then you have to find something else to teach, something that you're excited about. If it's not perfectly in the curriculum, fine. If this is not exciting me today, I shouldn't teach it. There has to be a chayos. And it can be telling the story of the parsha, but you're fully alive in that story. You're fully animated in that story. That story is fully, it's almost like you don't even have self-awareness that you're in the room, because you're sometimes, sadly, we have teachers that teach a same classroom, same curriculum for 20, 30 years and so on and so forth, that your mind could be numb. Your mind can be completely like thinking something else. And you can be like on autopilot and give your whole lesson. And and then you give the test and so on. It's the information. And there's no chayas, no neshama, no connection of soul. There has to be connection of neshama. And connection of neshama comes from the fact that, but by you, the Indian is oifgelebt. And therefore, whether you're in a situation where you're teaching the same material from year to year, then I recommend that you always, whether it's the same chumash, whether it's the same inyanim, you have to always learn something new. You can't learn it can't be same old, same old. For most people, I had over here an event in my shul 2 weeks ago. We had a goodbye, this last week. I think it was last week Sunday. Yeah, we had a goodbye party for someone in the shul, and the guy spoke, and he gave me a compliment. I was very happy about it. He said, "I'm here for 10 years." He was here in the shul. He said, "The rabbi never gives over the same Torah." I don't. For me, if I'm not the same old stuff, recycling, I get tired. Now, it might just be my problem. I believe that you have stories of Chassidus that a Chassid lived with a Vart. He heard from the Rebbe for 30, 40 years. And when the Rebbe relates how the Chassid said it, he was like reliving it as if he heard it yesterday. First of all, he heard it directly from a Rebbe and so on and so forth. And there were Chassidim that were very, very special. They can live with one Vart and have chayos in it and energy it forever. Today's days, there isn't such a problem because we have so much given to us, so much Chassidus, so much sichos, maimarim, stories. There is an ocean of ocean. And not only do you have a lot, you have the same sikha, but you can read it, or the same Indian, you have different teachers giving it over, each one with their own knach and so on and so forth. So if you're used to something and hearing it one way and then it dries out. You learn the same thing, you heard it from someone else, and suddenly it has a whole new meaning and a whole new application, and you're so excited and it's just flowing. I'm thinking of myself when I came to Kfar Chabad the first time. I was then learning in Slobodka, in yeshiva, in Bnei Barak, in a real Litzvish yeshiva. And sometimes people ask me to tell my story, what brought me to Chassidus. And I tell the story, and I say, when I heard the first Farbrengen, and when I heard the first Sikha Shir in Chassidus, and it turned me on fire. But looking at the truth of it, when I remember when I told the story a lot, like you haven't been relating it too much, but I remember there was something that I would always say, and I think this is really what got me. It's partially when I came to Kfar Chabad and I saw the Mendel Futefas, I saw some other elderly Chassidim. I saw they were alive. I felt chayos. I went back to Slobodka and I saw, sadly, a certain deadness, a certain heaviness, just information, learned, but without life, without that joy, without that simcha. So the core in teaching has to be always fresh. And I would recommend that you suggest, if you feel that you've been teaching third grade so many years and you've taught the same whatever information, or fifth grade, and so you can switch classes and teach another grade, for just that it becomes fresh by you, or figuring out, as we said before, or teaching different material, because sometimes it's the same material. Sometimes you can't blame someone because the same material could become pretty dried out. So this is very, very, very core, essential to Chassidische Chinuch, that there has to be a lebedigkeit and a neshamadik energy. The more one digs deeper into the deeper meaning, the Chassidus of it, that brings out the chayes. For example, of course, when you're teaching the little kinderlich, Parshas Vayetze, you're telling them the basic story of Yaakov going out from Haran and going over there. So you're not going to necessarily teach them the deep meaning of an neshama coming down into this world, because that's the pirush of it. Once you get older, in older grades, you could do that. But I'm saying even a teacher who's teaching it for the little kids, for the kids who are not going to get the Chassidish pirush, if the teacher themselves has learned Chassidus that week, learned Chassidish parsha that week, and Chassidish parsha again doesn't have to be only Lakuti Torah or talking about the Sichos of the Rebbe, and even brought down and into small little bite-sized pieces that today's days are available through the various different Perushim and so on and so forth. If you yourself have the deeper pirush of what it means, then automatically the energy that you have when you're telling the story of Yaakov, even if you're not conveying the actual Torah to the children, but the energy, the neshama energy that you're turned on in it, is going to go over to the kids. So, for instance, let me just get simple. You have a story of Yaakov Avinu going out from Haran, and he's traveling I'm sorry, Yaakov's going out from Beersheba, he's going to Haran. Okay, it's a story that happened 3,500 years ago. When you know the secret of it, that's what the idea is. Oyer, when you look at Chassidus gives you the oyer. It brings the chayas. What's the chayas? What's the oyer? So, for instance, just a simple story. Yaakov Avinu is not just Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu is each and every one of us. Beersheba is from a lashon shavua, comes from the place that our neshama before it comes down. Mashbiya noisoy tihi tzadik, be a tzaddik. And that's the oath that's called the Ershama. Vayelech Harana, we're going to Haran. So what's Haran? Chassidus explains the place that angers God. So you can understand that relates to the body. The physical world. The physical world, a lot of times, it makes all kinds of suggestions to us that are not necessarily pleasing to the Eibishter. It's a place that there's a lot of stuff over here that are not holy. So Yaakov Avinu is the neshama going from the Ershava, going down to Haran. And what happens? Vayivka b'makom, a heilige neshama, a chelik l'kami mal mamish. Vayivka b'makom, bumps into time and space, bumps into space, makom. Suddenly is hit by a world, by a frozen world. Up there it sees everything is chayas. Over here it comes across vayifka, literally bumps like you smash your nose. You come across matter, time and space. And what? Kiva Hashemesh, the sun has set. Vayolen Sham, you're staying overnight, Kiva Hashemesh, because the sun has set. As Chassidus explains, the sun is Shemesh Havaya. The gilui of Yudke Vavke, the gilui of Einoid Movadli, the gilui that which the Neshama had in Gan Eden, where it sees the sun radiating, the sun of Elokus shining. But over here, Kiva Hashemesh, the sun has set. It's dark. All you see is the physical world. And what happens immediately? Vayikach me'avnei hamakom. So your avodah is to find within the makom, within the material things of the world, you take from the stones. The stones represent everything in the physical world is made up of oisiyos, letters. And Chassidus explains how letters are stones. So you take from these letters, and that's why we're here in the physical world. We're here in this frozen world where there's no sunlight, and all you have is a bunch of stuff, and we're gatherers of that stuff, and you put it under your head, and what happens to all these stones? They become even achas. That's the idea of your life, that everything that happens, all the material things in your life are all joined together. They become one unit of Achdus Hashem, of unity of God. You give a pirush like that, and you yourself are excited about it. This gives such chayos, this gives such lebedik. Just an example, Pashas Vayetze, the first pasuk, the first two psukim. So it is every pasuk, every mishnah, every piece of navi, every Rashi. You have to find something in it that excites you, a deep, higher message that excites you. And let me just conclude with one last idea, and that is ultimately, being that we're in a physical world, a world which the etzem metzias of the physical world is one that's the opposite of chayos. It's the opposite of energy and light. It's dark, and until Mashiach comes, which Mashiach is already knocking on the door. But the etzem nature of the physical. So where do we get our chayos? So obviously we get our chayos. You get chayos from Chassidus, but the real chayos we get is because we plug our neshama into the makar hachayos. Of course, into the Eibishter, but down here, lamata, in this world, we plug ourselves in to the makar of all neshamas in this world, and that is the Rebbe. Right? So we plug, and that's where we get chayos from. But in the Rebbe himself, we have to realize that we have to see, the Alter Rebbe says about a tzaddik. Alter Rebbe says that what's his life? What's the life of the tzaddik? Emunah ava v'yira. It means that the tzaddik is not just to the Rebbe. It's obviously there's a certain physical element. We have the pictures of the Rebbe and so on and so forth. You're plugging yourself into the energy of the Rebbe. So within the Rebbe itself, we take a look at, for instance, all the Rabbeim. We see that their koch and their energy is not necessarily the same in all the generations. The Rebbe Rashab was koching sich very strongly. His energy was in avoida, in kuntres atfila, in kuntres avoida, and he was producing bachrim who would daven for hours and would go into a state of dveikus, of ava b'yira, and the deepest levels of iskafia, and so on and so forth. The Rebbe took the energy, the Rebbe's energy was in the idea of ufaratzta, conquering the whole world, nachla b'lim etzadim, avas yisrael, reaching every single Jew. Everybody sees where the Rebbe's come. But in the Rebbe himself, as you go through the years, in the last 10 years, from Tafshin Mem based, I would say primarily, and then increased a millionfold, if you can say, from Tafshin Nun Aleph, and Nun Beis, the Rebbe's koch is Mashiach. That's where the Rebbe's energy is. That's where the Rebbe's chayos is. That means that the place of chayos, the generator of chayos, today's days, is Geula, is Mashiach. Therefore, in addition to everything I said before, that you have to find within yourself excitement, and excitement comes from Chassidus, from the deeper understanding, and you have to be excited about the Chassidus that you're learning, to learn it in a way that it excites you, and then you can give it over. In addition to that, since the primary chayos today is Moshiach, and that's where the world is at, and that's where the Eibishter is at, and that's where the Rebbe is at, and that's where Hasidus is at, because it can't be anywhere else but for the place where the Rebbe put it, and the Rebbe put it last, as you can see in all the sikhs, in Moshiach. That means that our koch, where we get our chayos, is in Moshiach and in Geula. And therefore, when we connect everything that we're teaching, everything we see is connected somehow or in some way to Moshiach and to Geula. And how do you do that? That is if you yourself are excited about Moshiach and Geula. So this is all simply in order to give chayos to the children, in order to give chayos to your students. You have to be alive yourself. To be alive yourself, we have to be makusher to the makar hachayos. Makar hachayos today is in Yonei Geula Mashiach. So this is so important, and the kids are waiting. And obviously, we're holding over there. So this is what's necessary right now. So they should help all of us, that we should all be mechanchem the way we should. We should all be a lebedige chassidim, freiliche chassidim, simchadige chassidim, freiliche chassidim, and alive, and that life force to transmit to all of our students. May you all have tremendous hatzlacha.
Amen. Thank you very